page lifecycle events which were automatically invoked during the page lifecycle. Another one was application and section related events, right? Those are also automatically invoked. Now server control event, server control. Now we have used few controls so far, like text box, button. These two controls we have used. So those are ASP.NET server controls. Now some events are associated with the control, which we call them control events. Now those control events are also divided in three categories. One is postback event, which we have seen also, cached event, and validation events. What a postback event is, which causes page to be sent to the server for the processing, right? So what we do is first time request, page comes, fill up data and request for the same page again to the server. So those are the postback events. Postback events in ASP.NET are associated with three controls by default. Okay, you can make other controls also causing postback, but by default it is associated, or basically you can see it is enabled for these three controls: button, link button, and image button. Okay, now in the next class, or maybe in the session 3, yeah, we will use all these controls. Second is cached event. Cached event are event which are basically cached or saved in the page view state. Okay, page view state is also saved on the server. So these are saved in the page view state, and these events wait for some postback event to occur. Okay, now when some postback event occurs, then just before that postback event, this cached event occurs. So for example, I'm just giving here an example. You have a text box here and a button here. Text box has a text change event, and button has button click event. So this text change event is a cached event. Okay, when you're writing on the text box, actually the text change event should be fired because the text is being changed. Okay, but it will be saved when you are changing the text. It is cached in the page view state, and it will wait for some postback event. So now when you click on the button, then before that button click, then that cached event gets fired. Okay, let me show you this so it will be more comfortable. These examples I have already emailed you. Now I have a text box and a button. Now I'm here. What I'm doing is double click on this text box, and you can see this event is generated, the module text box text change event, and double click on the button. This is generated. Now what I'm putting is I'm just adding 2 breakpoints on both of these events and executing this. Now I'm saying then this text box text change event is the cached event, and it will wait for this or wait for some postback event on the page to occur. Then before that postback event, it will move. Now I'm changing the text in text box actually. So the event should occur now, but it is saved. Now until some postback event occurs, it will not be invoked. But when some postback event gets invoked, first it will be invoked and then that postback event. Okay. Is this point clear, guys? cached event?
So that means first the postback event occurred, then only the cached event.
Yeah, raised. Raising is first postback event.
Okay.
And cached event has already raised, but it is saved. Okay. Now it is waiting for postback. So when postback is raised, before postback handling, the cached event is being handled, and then postback is handled.
Okay, so it's wait, cached event is wait there. Once the postback event raised,
yeah,
then it's followed the the cached events.
Right. So postback event, it is waiting for postback event raising. Okay. So when it will be raised, so handling is again in the same order. So cached event will be handled first and then postback, because cached event was raised before the postback, but it was waiting for some postback event. Okay.
Okay.
Without postback, it cannot be raised. It cannot be invoked basically.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Now this is by default. You can change it. We'll see how to change it. These cached events, you can convert them in postback events as well. There is a property we'll see. Next is validation events. Now validation events are mostly, these events are handled on the page without posting back. Okay. So first what we want to correct the errors, then send our page to the server. Right? So without posting back on the client side itself, we have these events, validation events. Okay, validation events is for, we generally, whenever we have a form, we check for the format of the form fields. Okay, so name should be in this format, age should be in the proper format. We cannot put a string in place of age. It should be a number like this. So these events will be fired before any other event. Okay, without posting the page back to the server. So these two events, postback and the cached events, are fired through ASP.NET Server Control, and validation events are fired through validation server controls. There are validation server controls in ASP.NET. So you can see the sequence. So when you are typing something on the client side itself, validation events are getting fired. Then when you click on OK button, which is the postback event, so before postback, the cached events which are waiting for the postback in the view state, those will be fired, and then the postback event will be fired. So this is the sequence. Okay, any questions so far?
So for the validation events, the temporary values will be stored in the validator server, is it?
Sorry?
For the validation events, the temporary values of the text and all will be will they be stored in the validation server somewhere?
So validation events, this validation events which I'm talking by default is on the client side. Client side have value in text box. You don't have to save it in the server.
Oh, okay.
Okay, but validation events can be fired at the server side. You can write both side validation. You can write it on the client side as well. You can write it on the server side as well. So when it is on the server, then you are saving it. Then your data will be fetched from the view state, and then the validations will be applied or will be checked basically. It will be verified.
So when it's on
but
the
here
client,
you don't need it.
Okay. So when it's on the client side, the validation, the text box, whatever we fill in the text box, it is first validated, and then it is saved in the view state for the postback, for that button event and all to occur.
No, it is not saved in the view state on the client side. It is saved in the view state on the server side.
Oh, okay.
See, server is generating the HTML. On the client side, view state loading happens. On the server side, saving happens. Okay, so client has the data. Okay, still that data is on the form. Okay, so client knows what data is. Okay, so it can validate, right?
Okay.
You can do this is the ultimately HTML input type. Okay. So input type element ID dot value. You can find this data. Okay. As long as it is with the client. Okay. When this data is posted to the server. Okay. So what does server do? Server knows this is coming through HTTP. HTTP has no method to save this data. Whatever has been sent to the server. Okay. It will forget. Okay. When it will come to the client, it will forget that data. So client will not see this data automatically. So that time what server does, on the server, whatever data has come to the server is processing, but before generating the response, what server is doing, it is saving into the view state. Or input hidden elements. Okay. So with the HTML response, this is also embedded and sent back to the client. Okay. Now client has these hidden elements. So client browser can interpret it and put the data back into the controls.
Okay.
So here loading happens, here saving happens.
Okay. Yeah. It's fine.
Is this 100% clear or still any doubt?
It's clear.
Clear?
Okay. Tanvi, for example, in the text box, I'm typing some numbers instead of typing name. And I sent the response to the server. So there the validation is happening, or in the client side, it won't allow me to enter.
See, it is depending how you are writing. That is what I'm saying. You can write validation on the client and on the server. This is your choice. Okay. So if you have written client side validation, of course it will be executed first on the client and client will check it. Okay. And if the client side validation is there, until you correct that error, it will not go to the server. But if you have not written client side validation, then it will go to the server.
Okay, and in the server side, we can do the validation there.
Yeah, on the server also you can do the validation. But what is the best? What is the better choice? You tell me. What option should we choose?
The client side. If the data is not in a correct format, then it won't go to the server.
So this is the better. Better is first we have to always do the validation at the client, because there is no, you are wasting one round trip and you are wasting all the performance issues will come. Your page response will be slow because unnecessary you will go to the server and get the error and then correct it and then again will go to the server. So it doesn't make any sense. So first correct your errors at the client side itself. So you do the validation at the client side. Okay. Now client side validation can be, it can be removed by hackers. Okay. Ultimately those will be scripts. Okay. If your script is hampered or maybe some browser has done this, disabled script. Okay. It will not work. So for double checking, you should do your validations at the server side also. Are you getting it?
Okay.
Okay. So it should be both ways, client side validation, server side validation. This is the best scenario. Okay. So first client side is mandatory and you should do it. It's not mandatory. You not get any error. Syntactically you not get any error, but it is mandatory and you should do it. Now these things that client side validation as well as server side validation, will see how validation controls handle it. Okay. When we did not have these validation controls, how do we validate data on the client side? What do we use? What language we use? JavaScript, VB script, scripting language. Yeah.
JavaScript, scripting language.
Yeah. Right. Any scripting language. So VB script is not good because it will only be executed on the IE browser. So everyone uses JavaScript. So our validation controls will also use underneath JavaScript. Okay, we'll see those. Now event handlers. So this is within page lifecycle stages, ASP.NET page raises events that can be handled in the code. So we saw all these events, init, pre-init, page load, all these events. For most of the situations, we will mostly use this page load event and some control events. page init, pre-render, render, most of the time you will not need to use them, but you may come across a situation where you may want to use them as well. Okay. Now what event handler is, so there are two event handlers. There are two type of event handlers. One are control specific and another one is page or session specific. So page event always happens in a certain order. So this is the naming convention is used in ASP.NET, page and underscore and name of the event. Okay, and you don't have to wire them explicitly. You don't have to associate them with the razor. It will be always executed in the sequence, in some specific sequence. While control events need to be explicitly wired. Okay, so how to explicitly wire the control event? When I wrote just now I wrote a program. I double click on the button. So ASP.NET did this automatic wiring. ASP.NET handled. So if you will see the button code in ASPX, you will see this code will be added with the element button or with the control button. Okay, so this is the event association or wiring with the razor, event razor method. Or if you are not doing programmatically, you can do so, which we have seen in the C#. Okay, so this is how you can wire up your event with the event razor programmatically. Okay, in the code. You can do it in the page load, because in the page load, all the controls are initialized and available to access. Okay, so button submit.click event is handled by this method, which is the event handler method. Okay, and this method will have the specific signature of sender, object type, and event arguments class type. Okay. So this is a way to how to automatically associate the event. So go to the button's properties and you will find this tab. Click here, you will find all the events associated with this button class and double click on whatever event you want to use. So for example, double click here on the click event. So it will add this code in the button. Okay, or just double click on the button directly on the design view, because click is the default event of the button class. One event is set as default in all the classes. Okay, so for example, text change event for the text class, it is set as default. So when I double click on the text, it will create automatically the text change event. Other events you have to create like this. Right click, go to the properties, find events, and then double click here. Okay, any questions so far? Okay, detecting postback, guys, we have done. Can someone tell me, Anita, how can we detect is this postback or not in ASP.NET?
Page.isPostback event, sorry, property.
Okay. So is postback is the property through which we can detect it is the postback or not. What is the postback? What postback is? Anyone? Kirti is writing a round trip. Okay.
It's a submitting data to the server.
Submitting data to the server.
Request to the server.
Yeah. So when we are posting data and again requesting, the server should do processing on the data, that is a postback. If we don't type any data in the text box, let's say, if we don't type any data and we click on the button, is it a postback or not? I have a form, we have text boxes, I leave them blank, okay, and I click on submit button. Will it be postback or not? I'm not typing any data.
think so.
Rupa says yes, it is a postback. Yeah. Okay, that's right. So it is a postback. Okay. So whenever you are clicking on the button, that means you want to send information to the server. Now it is your choice. If you are not typing anything, it will be empty string from the point of the server that you have typed empty string. Okay. So still it is a postback. So basically the same request you are again doing on the server. One time you got a page, one time you got a resource, and again same resource is being requested from the server. Why do you request it again? Because you want to do some processing. First time you got it, now you are sending some information. Now this is another thing that you are leaving all the fields blank. Still it is a postback. Okay. So many times we want to write a code which is different from the first request and the subsequent postback request. So we need to detect this is a postback or not. So there is a property which we use, which is a postback property. So with this postback, we detect that this is a first time request or not. This is the property is postback. So we have already used this. Okay, now postback and non-postback event. So postback event is which is causing page to be sent to the server again, and non-postback is like cached events which are not doing so. Okay, so button type controls with click event always generate an immediate postback request to the server, but not all controls generate an immediate postback. Okay, in fact most of the controls event by default do not even cause a postback. For example, label control cannot ever cause a postback, or change events like text box text change, selection change. They also not generate postback by default, but you can change them. You can make them cause postback also. How? So for example, I am using a drop down list. If you will see the properties of drop down list, it has a property auto postback. Okay, by default this property is false for the drop down list. Okay, so it behaves like a cached event. So until you click on a button, this will not be executed. It will be waiting in the view state. This is basically a cached event. But when you turn this property to true, it behaves like a postback control or a postback event. So when you do a selection change, it will cause a postback to the server. Okay. Getting it, guys? Okay, let me show you this. The auto postback property. We'll need it many times, auto postback property. Now this text box event, text box control. Now you can see auto postback is false. So it is behaving as now as a cached event. I'm changing it to true. Okay. Now we'll see the text box text change event. The breakpoint is there. Okay, I am changing something here. Okay, now you can see I did not click on the button, but this event fired. Okay, so this event on the page is behaving like a postback. Okay, so if you have a drop down list or any other control, so you can make them behave as a postback control. Okay. Is it clear, guys? Any questions so far? So two properties we have seen here. One is the page property is postback. Another one is the control specific property, which is the auto postback. Okay. Both properties we will very frequently will be using in the code. Okay. Shall I move on, guys? Okay. Now what is happening underneath when we are requesting some resource from the server, or basically when we are requesting Resource means we are especially requesting, we are talking about web page here, some ASPX page from the server. This we have discussed in the introductory class as well. So the visual elements of the page, the visual elements, what are the visual elements? The button, text box, whatever the graphical user interface we are using. So those elements are passed into the class. This class along with its code is .aspx.cs code is dynamically compiled into the MSIL. Then MSIL is JIT compiled and executed on the server when we are requesting that page. Okay. In the execution, the server is producing the HTML and JavaScript that is sent to the browser. Okay, this is what is happening. You can see here. So your ASPX files converted to ASP.NET as the class files. Okay, it is combined with the code behind files and compiled. Generated MSIL is there, and that will be kept on the server. When you request a page from the server, that time it will be JIT compiled, and you will see the response in HTML, or browser will see the response in the HTML. Okay, this is another thing. There is the app code folder in the ASP.NET. Many files we want to write just the code. We don't want them to be visualized. Okay, we don't want any graphical interface for them. We just want some code files. So those files you can keep in app code folder. Those can be only .cs files, as we were writing in the C# express.cs files. Okay, some common code is there which you can use in .aspx.cs and which you want to use in multiple .aspx.cs files. So you can keep there. For example, you want to open a connection with the database. Okay, this thing you may want to do it in multiple files in a project. Okay, so this code, open a connection, you can keep it in a CS file. That CS file you can name like DB connection, and here you can have a method open connection. Okay, so this file is common to the project, so that you can keep it in the app code folder. So there is also C# code which also will be compiled and MSIL will be generated. Okay, and all this is kept on the server. Okay, so we have the MSIL for specific pages as well as we have MSIL for the common classes. So on the server we have DLL for the specific pages and for the app code folder as well. Is it clear, guys? How you can add app code folder to your solution is you have to, this is ASP.NET folder. So right click on the application and add ASP.NET folder. Now you will get an option here. I am not getting app code option here because it is already added. Okay, so these are the ASP.NET folders: global resources, local resources, browsers, and there is one more option, app code. Okay, you can see this is added here, and there are some CS files. One is for SQL connection. Okay, I am not doing anything here, but this also be compiled and kept on the server. Okay, guys, here any question, any doubt? Shubha, Shobana, are you guys getting it?
Yeah, yes. Yes, Tanvi, but I need to do it like a project, then one day I'll get all those things, I think. I need more practice on this one, I think.
So I will give you today one assignment I will give you.
Okay.
Okay. So I will today give you 1 or 2 assignments. Then you can try them on. I think you will feel more comfortable then.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, now page class, all the web forms ultimately inherit from the page class, okay, which is defined here in the system.web.ui. So this is what you see whenever you write an ASPX. By default, it creates a class which is being inherited from system.web.ui.page. Okay, so this page class inheritance is very important, or it is must basically. This page class itself So this page class itself is inheriting from template control class, and template control class is inheriting from the control class. These are some more underneath details. Page class provides a great deal for functionality exposed as properties and methods that can be used in the web forms. Some of these properties are same as objects. Okay, so this page class, when we are using a page class, we are able to write this line of code, response.write. Okay, we wrote this line of code to display on the page. Okay, so response object, how this is available? Because we are using a page class. Okay, so when you are using a page class, through page request, response, session, server, these objects also will be available. What ASP.NET objects? There are some more objects also ASP.NET which we will need to use in the web form or the pages. We'll discuss them also. Okay, so we'll end this session with the summary points. Web applications are distributed between a client and a server. Web application uses server control and HTML controls rather than Windows controls, displayed in a browser rather than in their own window. So web forms are not persistent while displayed. So we have to preserve the data in state variables during the page and the control events. So we can preserve the data in view state, session state, application state, right? Processing occurs on the server and data is exchanged through a cycle of requests and responses. Web applications are using web forms to create user interface that is presented through an internet browser. The code that responds to events run on the web server which is hosting the application. Web applications are event driven and event occurs at the application level, page level and the control level. Server controls events are categorized in the validation, cached and postback events, and this is the order. Okay, so first validation event occurs before sending page to the server, then cached occurs and then postback occurs. So there is a catch here that cached occurs before postback, but they wait for the postback to occur. Without postback, cached events are not caused. Okay. So start with the new session. And guys, feel free to ask me any question between, even if I'm not asking that you have doubt or not. Okay. So now we know some details about ASP.NET, some concepts, some fundamentals. Now what are there? Now we will actually start so that we can develop our code, or we can basically develop our pages. We can develop user interface and we can write code on the pages. So we'll start with first GUI, because this is the first thing. GUI is the main thing on the any web application. So now we'll see what controls are available. So far we have only used text box and button. Other than these two, there are many controls available. So you will see all these controls and we'll design our user interface. So your user interface, or basically ASP.NET controls, are divided in mainly three parts. So one is server and HTML control, which we are using like text box, button, validation control, which we will use for validation, and navigation control, which we'll be using for navigation. Navigation controls are not always control, it is control plus method, which I'm explaining here. Okay. Now in the server control itself, we have some standard controls, we have some data controls. So we'll see them. Now this is the difference between the server control versus HTML control. So server control trigger control specific events on the server, while HTML controls can only cause postback. State management, here in the server controls, state is managed using viewState. Okay. In the HTML controls, by default, there is no way to maintain the state. You can write your own scripting so that you can maintain the data in using the scripting. Okay, adaptation, when you are using server controls, it automatically detects the browser, even the browser version, and display according to the browser you are using. While in the HTML controls, there is no automatic adaptation based on the browser. You can write your code in the script, you can detect that browser, and based on that, you can write the code for the browser. Basically, you will have to write the browser specific code there, while it will automatically display them properly based on the browser you are using. Okay. In HTML controls, you have HTML attributes only. Whatever attributes you have with the input element, select element, here you have a good set of properties. Okay. Those properties can change the control's appearance as well as the behavior. Okay. So you have even property for the buttons, border color, border width. These are available as properties, or you have properties available for the behavior, so you can change the text over the button. Okay, so this is the difference between the HTML and the server controls. Mostly will need server controls only. Sometimes you may need to use HTML controls as well if something is not fulfilling, some requirement is not fulfilling with the server controls. Okay, now what kind of controls are available to work with text? We have label, text box, and literal control available. Display table. So label, text box, we know what label is. We can display some label, like let's say name, and then we have a text box where we can enter. So user cannot input in the label basically, but in the text box we can read user's input. Okay. Now there is a literal control also. Literal control is for example, literal control is taking everything literally. So with this literal control, you can embed HTML script as well. Let me explain you. For example, I have a text box. When you say text box 1.text, and let's say you write this thing, BR. Okay, this is how you are typing the text in the text box, or setting the text in the text box. What it will do, guys? Tell me. What will happen? What will you see on the text box?
That is string only, no?
String only, yes.
Yeah,
right. So you will see this.
Yeah.
You will see like this. Okay. It will treat it as a string. Okay. But when you have a literal control, and let's say with that literal control, you are setting this text, literal control dot text, and the same thing. What it will do, it will take it literally, and instead of writing this script, it will put a line break. Okay. Which BR does. Okay. So with the literal control, you can add script dynamically. If you want to add script dynamically, you can add it through the literal control. So in the text property of the literal values, when you set something like this, script, so it will treat them as script. Okay, not like a string. It will treat them as the HTML element. We'll see them in detail. Yeah, Anita, I just saw your answer. Yeah, it is right. It will type BR. Then to work with tables, we need sometimes the data in the tabular format. Okay. So to work with tables, we have controls like table control, data grid control, and we have a grid view control. Okay. This control is very useful, grid view control. Grid view control, we will not take it in the server controls class, but we will take this control in our ADO.NET class. Okay, so ADO.NET, we will just be working with the database and we'll be inserting and fetching data from the database. So that time we'll use this grid view control. Select from list. Okay, so we have list. What kind of list available? Drop down list. One time you can make only one selection. List box, multiple selection. Data list, multiple selection, and repeater control. Okay, so these are the different data list controls. Performing commands. So the controls which can perform command or can cause postback to the server. So button, link button, image button are available. Set values. So for set values is checkbox list, radio button list. So set values, checkbox and radio button. These two controls work or basically written in bool type, true or false. Did you check or not? Okay. Radio button, it is selected or not. Okay. Even the checkbox list and the radio button list. So these are the controls to set or get values. Display images. To work with images, you have an image button. You have an image map also. Okay. So images, you can add image on your page. You can do it in the design time from the SPX, or you can do it programmatically. Image button is on the button. The image is behaving as a button basically. So on the button you have image, and when you click on the button, it is causing the postback. Okay. So display images, the image buttons basically is shown in two categories, but it is used for performing commands only. The only thing is you will see a nice button where you can see the image rather than just a text written on it. Navigation. For the navigation, you have a control hyperlink, and link button also sometimes used as a navigation control. Mostly it is used as a control which can cause the postback, but you can make it behave like an hyperlink also, so it can be a navigation control as well. Grouping of controls is done through the panel and placeholder. Okay, so panel and placeholder groups the control. That this is the panel 1, here you have a text box and a button. This is the panel 2, here you have these things. Okay, so many times in a form you want to basically visible or hide multiple controls based on some event or something basically. So you can group them, those controls. Now at one point of time I want to hide or display them, so I'm grouping them in a panel or placeholder, so I can just hide or make it visible, the panel. Okay, so this will be done basically for the child controls. They become the child controls of the panel and the placeholder. Work with date. So to get date or to select date, we have the calendar control. Display advertisements, we have the add rotator control. Display horizontal rules, so literal controls as we have already discussed. Get file name from the client. This none is actually no more true. It is the old slide. Before we did not have anything to get the file name from the client, but now we have the file load control available. Store data on pages. So we don't have to do anything. Store data on pages. It will be provided automatically by state management. And validate data. For validation, we have required field, range, validator, regular expression, and compare. All these validation controls are available. Now we'll try to use these controls. If some is left, guys, I will not be able to track each and every control. There are many controls in ASP.NET. So if some is left, you can explore on your own. And if you have some problem, you can ask me then. But I will try to cover most of them. So working with text, the most popular control is text box. Okay, and it is on every other form you will see this control. Now there are many properties associated with the text box. If you right click on the text box, you will see there will be a lot of properties. These are some properties which we will be using frequently. So one is text, which we already know, get or set data in the text box. Then there is the property text mode. How you can set a text mode is single line. If it is a single line, this is a by default mode and you are entering data and it will be in the single line. Multi-line, which will be like a text area. So how in the HTML you have a text area element, right? Here you don't have a text area element, but you can set your text box as a mode in multi-line. So it will be behaving like a text area. You can enter data in multiple lines. And password mode. So when it is set as password mode, whatever you enter, it will be displayed like these characters or whatever character you choose, cross, whatever character you can choose. Read only, if you want your text box to be in read only mode, that means only the set property, only the get property will be available, set will not be available. You cannot write or you cannot type the data in the text box. Auto postback property is also there, which is changing text box cached event into the postback event. Okay. So these are the properties available. We'll see how to use a text box. Actually, we all know how to use a text box, but still. Okay, now on this form I have a text box. How to drag a text box from toolbox? You go to the toolbox, select text box and drag it on the form. Okay. Now this is a text user. You can see there is no property here. Okay. In the password, you can see the text mode property I am using, which is the password. And there is one more property, max length, 12. So maximum 12 characters are allowed to type in the text box. So many times you want to keep the maximum length on the password, so you can use this. Another text control is label. So label is, you cannot type into the label, you cannot set the label, but you can use it for the display purpose. Okay, and then I have a button. Two text boxes and one button. And what code I am writing here is, see guys, this is code just for the demonstration. So what I'm checking is, if the text user.text is admin and password is also admin, then do something. Now here I am using label and setting text on the label, else setting some other text on the label. Now here whatever I am typing comes here, or here whatever I am typing comes like this in the password mode. Okay. And on the button click I am setting this label. So these are the few text controls. You can try with other properties. You can just explore other properties. For example, this is property window. You can see here what properties are available. For example, autocomplete. So on the Google, whenever you search something, you see it comes in the autocomplete list. Okay, it will give you a choice to autocomplete your the input. So you can choose also autocomplete turn on or turn off. Other things also there. For example, this single line mode. These are the different mode available. Do it multi-line. So you can see this is now text area. You can put in multiple lines. So you will have to explore all these properties. Okay. Is it okay, guys? Can you just work with them at home? Here, if I will try to cover each and every property, then guys, it will take a lot of time. Okay. Now table, text box label is covered. Now working with tables and lists. So we have list box control. So it displays read-only text in a simple scrollable list. We have a scrollable list. Drop-down list. It displays read-only text in a simple drop-down list format. The drop-down list is this. At one point of time, we can only select one. Table in the tabular format. It can display text as well as in a table or in any, basically in any data control. Instead of just a text, you can have control also. So in a tabular format also you can have this. You have a text box here, then a text box here. Okay. So table is displaying text and controls in a column and rows. Okay. With the table control, we can actually add columns and rows dynamically with the other classes available. Table row classes there, table cell classes there. So we can create object of those classes and add them to this table rows and table cells collection. Then there is a data grid. These three controls actually doing the same thing. Okay, but there is some pros and cons. In the data grid also it is displaying the text and control in the column and rows, but it is using a template which is to control the appearance. And this has some inbuilt formatting, sorting and paging capabilities. Okay, you can format your data, you can sort your data in the tables, and you can page your data. If you have a large amount of data, you can distribute them into the pages, 1 page, 2 page, 3 page. Okay. Data list displays rows, no columns, display rows of text and controls, again using a template to control the appearance. Repeater display rows but in the repeater, it is must to use the template to control appearance. It does not have its appearance for itself. Okay, so you have to use a template control compulsory here, and it does not have any inbuilt capability of sorting, paging and all, like a data grid and data list control. So based on the situation comes, you can choose your control. There is one more control which is not their grid view, which also will be discussed. Okay. So now in any data control, so these are the data controls, list box control. You can bind them with some data source also, from server also, from XML data source also. So all these controls, you can bind data at the design time as well as at the runtime. Okay, so design time is from the ASPX you will bind the data, okay, and it will be the static data always you will see the same data, or you can bind it at the runtime dynamically. You can make them get or fetch data from some database table as well. Okay, so let's see the example for it. Okay, so here I have a drop-down list and a list box. How to bind data at design time? For any data control, what you have to do is right click here. You will see collection, items collection, and from here you can add data at design time. Okay, so here you can write a text and the value associated with it. Okay, whatever value. So it added one more item. This is the way for any drop down, any list or any data control. This is the way you can add that item at design time. How to add item at runtime? Now this, I want to add item, whatever user types in this text box, in this list box as well as in the drop down list. Okay, so simple. On the add button click, I am doing it. So list box, every data has this items collection. Okay, add method, this is a collection, there is add method available, and you can add whatever you want. This is the dynamic way of adding the data. Now here I am typing ASP on the add. This will be added to the list box as well as on the drop down list. So it is added dynamically. This is what I am doing in the, okay, so 1, 2, 3 added, 1, 2, 3 added. This is what I am doing here in the programmatically, dynamically. Is it clear? Now, if you will see on the list box, what a list box is, nothing but a collection of different list item objects. Okay, so here I am adding a simple string in the list box, but what you can do is you can basically create an object of list item and you can add that object. Okay, when you create list item object, you can set two properties, the text property and the value property, and then you can add that object also in the list box. Okay, because it is a collection of multiple list items. Any questions, guys, so far? Okay, so this is what we have already discussed. To add static items, we will right click on the controls, properties, go to collection and add it from there, or dynamically you can write code to add. To add static items to the table control, you can select the rows properties and then in that you can add in the collection. Okay. Now we'll see another control which we can use if you want to add items in these data controls, but from some data source. or here we are assuming we are using a SQL server as a database. So we want to add some data from the SQL server table. Okay. So we can use this. This SQL data source also is a control which we can use. We'll see the example of SQL data source control. Yes, every one of you are familiar with SQL server. Everyone knows how to create table in the SQL server at least. Okay. Shubha, do you know?
Yeah, I know the basic ones like select, insert, create, and
Okay,
all those.
Okay. So that's good enough actually. Okay, so in this we will see how to, if I have a table in the database, how we can use SQL data source to connect to the database and fetch the data from the table. Actually, let me do it again in a new page. Otherwise, here I cannot understand it. Okay, so here I am adding some data control. Let's say I add, which we have not used so far, data control. Let me add data list. Okay, so here you can see this is coming. This thing is a, we call them the smart tag. Now I am adding a data source also, SQL data source also. This is a smart tag. I'm assuming I'm using it for the first time, so I'm configuring data source. Okay, so I already have some connection strings available, but what I'm doing is I'm creating a new connection here. Give your server information. My server is in Windows authentication mode. Select the database you want to communicate with.
Is it similar to JDBC, Java Database Connector?
Yeah. It is.
Okay, actually we usually do those things in coding.
Yeah, we will do all these things in the coding, Shobha.
Okay.
In the ADO.NET, we'll learn how to do all these things in the coding, and which is must actually to learn, because with the coding we can achieve many things which we cannot do here with these controls.
Okay.
Okay, but for the simpler things you can use these controls. But anyway, I will also suggest, or I will also always prefer to use the coding.
Okay.
Yeah, now it's coming. I will use this database .NET training. It has only 1 or 2 tables. You can test your connection. It created a connection string here. You can see. Okay. So initial catalog is the database. Integrated security is my database is running in the Windows authentication mode. If it is running in SQL Server authentication mode, it will ask the database name, sorry, user ID and the password, not the database name. And this is the database server name. Okay. So this is the new connection string. This will be added in web.config file. You can name it. This is 3 coming because already .NET connection string 1 and 2 is added in my web.config file. So it is asking me to save as 3. Okay, yes. The test query, this is, guys, give me a second, I'll be back. I'm back. So you can now test the query. The result you can see it is coming. Finish. So your database SQL data source has been configured. You can see here. This is the connection string. Okay, and this is the connection string name, and this is the select command. Now, if you will open your web.config file, you will see this will be added here. Okay, so this is you added through SQL data source, but you can, this is the format of adding the connection string, so you can directly write a code here like this, and you can add it as well without using a data source, SQL data source as well. Okay, now where were we? Yeah, now we want to fetch data from this SQL data source. Okay, this is configured with the database. Now here you have a smart tag with the data list. You can choose the data source, SQL data source one. I'm choosing. Okay. Now in the data list, you can see ID, name, and location. These are the 3 columns available in the table. Okay. So in the design view, you will see always like this 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. When you will run it, the actual data will be fetched, and you will be able to see it. Okay, so this is the data we are adding in the data list, and we are fetching it from the database server through another control, which is a SQL data source control. Okay, is it clear, guys? Getting it? Anyone, any question? Shubha, Anita, Shobna? No question? Okay. Now for performing commands, we have these controls button, link button, image button, which all trigger postback events to perform commands. Now we have used also button. We have already used button. Okay, now here I am using link button and image button. Okay, so on this page we have link button. There is a property for the link button, postback URL. Okay, so with this property, postback URL, it will actually be redirected to this page. Okay, but from the previous page, you can access the data on that page because it is actually posting the data on that page. Image button, you have you have the property image URL, where you can set some image path which will be displayed, and all these properties you can use at design time as well as at the runtime. And there is image button click. That event is handled, and on that event you can actually figure out where you have clicked on the image. Okay, so when we see this Google map, ultimately is the image, and when we click on that image it figures out the coordinate, and based on that it works. So whenever we have image button, many times we will need where we have clicked on. So we'll see all these things here. First, let me remove this code on the link button click. Okay. So this is a link button, this is a form, this is a text box on the page. So I will type something here, and a link button is taking me to the page, Postback link page. You can see the breakpoint is already added. Here you can access the previous form data. So request.form text user ID. So basically that form is being submitted on this page. Okay, so you can access that value. So you are linking as well as accessing the value. So it is kind of a navigation and performing commands both. Getting it, guys? If I have I double click here, then when I click on this link button, this will be executed. Then that postback URL will be ignored. Okay. Now for the image button, I have set some image URL, which is some image here. Now whenever when I click on it, this event is being executed. Now see, you can see this, there is some different event arguments in this event. So it is image click event arguments. This class itself is actually inherited from the normal event arguments class, but this is a child class. It has more specific, something specific to this class, and what that specific things is the coordinates X and Y. So we'll come to know where the user has clicked on the image. What are the coordinates? What are the points where the image has been clicked on? So it's X and Y coordinates you are getting. Okay. Many times when you are using image button, you will need to know, and you will work based on where has been clicked. So these things are available. A plain button, we have already used a normal button. What else is there? Okay. Let me do one thing. A normal, I'm adding a button. Go to the design. We have used click event for the buttons. Now I'm using one more event, which is a command event for the button. For the button, we have this command event also. So I'm using a command event. Go to the properties, and I'm giving some name of the command. Let's say insert. Let's say I will pass some command arguments also associated with the button command. Sample. Okay. Now events. I don't want to use click event, but I'm using this command event. Okay. So now here you can see this code. Only focus on this button element. Button 1. Text, all these are the normal things, but command argument sample and command name insert, and on command this is being called. Let's say I have another button as well. It is also calling the same method, button 1 command on command. The only thing is I will change the command name here, and I'm not passing, let's say, any argument, or even completely remove it. Command argument, I'm not even using it. There are two buttons, both are executing basically one event. Both will be handled by a single event. Okay, so insert and delete button, guys, don't go on the visual appearance. I'm not focusing on that. So I'll just here. Now you can see you have class, event argument, subclass, command event arguments. It has something specific, some special properties only available to this child class, which is e dot. You can access now command name and command argument. If e dot command name. Now in the same event, I want to first decide which button has raised it, because which command has been raised, and then based on that I want to execute some code. So e dot command name, what command name I used? Insert and delete. Okay. If it is insert, let me print the event argument as well. Sorry, command argument. Okay. Else, I'm not detecting any command here. I'll just this. Example 4. Sorry, which example it is? Yeah, example 4. So when I click on insert, let me put a breakpoint over here. I click on insert, it goes to this command event, check for the command name, it is insert, and do this. Execute some piece of code basically based on the command has been raised. Okay, so there is one more thing about the button. I mean, there are many more things, but this is also one thing which will be using frequently, which will need frequently while coding. Okay, there are no arguments with this command delete. Guys, are you getting it? Okay, so I'll move on. Performing commands, these some buttons have been discussed. Now getting and setting values. So to get and set values, we have the radio button list, checkbox and checkbox list. So let's see through the example. So again, checkbox, here is the checkbox, here is the checkbox list. You can drag and drop them. There will be radio button. Where is the radio button? Yeah, radio button and radio button list. Okay. So this is first thing is we are working with the checkbox. So 2 checkboxes I have added, and you can give the ID. And then on this button click, button check. We are checking which checkbox has been checked. So the code will see with the checkbox you have this property checked. So if check names equal to true, so you will come to know which one is checked. If address is true, then address is selected or checked. Okay, so with the checkbox, the only important thing we need property, the checked property. So which I am using on the button click. Now you have the radio button. In the radio button, whenever we have the radio button, we want this kind of functionality, which is when this is male and this is female. So when one radio button is selected, the other one will be automatically deselected. Okay, so when this is selected, this will be deselected. So to achieve this, what we have to do is we have to put those radio buttons which you want that only one should be selected at given point of time. So you will have to put them in the same group. So here comes the another property, which is the group name. Okay, so if that is in the same group, then this functionality you can achieve, that one time you can only click or select basically one radio button. Okay, now which one is selected? Again the same code. If this is checked or if this is checked. Okay, so again with the radio button also you have the checked property available. So now I will execute this code. We will discuss the radio button, and after this, first we'll see this. Then we have the checkbox list and the radio button list. Okay. Let me put the breakpoint over here. This is the event we are using. So basically when we click here set, we are setting values true and false. Set property we are using. Here also we are using set property when we checked or select from the radio button. When we do this button check, it is underneath accessing the get property of them. Okay, so here we are accessing the get. It is true. It is false here. Okay, so name selected, this checkbox, and female selected, this radio button has been selected. Okay, the important thing is both these things, the property useful is checked property, and for the radio button the useful property is group name. Okay, now we have a checkbox list. This is a checkbox list, and how you can items into a checkbox list, the similar way. From the collection you can add. If you want to add it at runtime, right here you can add the same thing. You will see this code will be added when you add item here. So the checkbox list is not a collection of multiple checkboxes. It is not collection of this class, okay? But it is a collection of list item class. Remember this. So whenever you want to add something in the checkbox list, you will have to create object of list item and not checkbox. Okay, so checkbox list is a collection of different list items, and list item is again different value and text. Now with the checkbox list you can do multiple selection is allowed. Now what has been selected, you can ultimately it's a collection. Okay, how we can traverse through a collection, we have done in the C#. We are using for each loop. Each object in this collection is list item. So list item class, your object name or variable in, and this is the collection. So checkbox list dot items. Okay. Now with each item you have this property selected, not checked, because this is not a checkbox but a list item. So you will have to use the property selected with each list item, and if you can check the property. If it is selected, then you can do whatever code you want to execute based on if it is selected or not. Here I am just printing which one is selected by the text property of the list item. Okay. So I selected accountant trainer. Two options I have selected. So accountant trainer is selected. We'll traverse through this collection using for each. Okay, this is what you will mainly need in the checkbox list, video button, and checkboxes. Okay, other things are also there. You can just explore them. What else is available? Okay, any question, guys? Anyone, any doubt? So Saturday we'll discuss rest of the server controls which we have not covered here. So we'll discuss the add rotator, image control, calendar, multi-view, placeholder, file upload, and then addition and navigation controls. Okay. whoever wants to practice can do something like okay. So whoever new to the ASP.NET, what you can do to practice is you make a form, make an employee form. You can have name. Now validation is required that name has to be, cannot be empty, or it can be only alphabets. Okay, but for now leave the validation because I have not covered. If you want, you can do it if you already know. An address, all characters, country, phone number, zip code, male, female will be radio button. Birth date will be a calendar control, which is also not yet covered. Age will be text box, email. So all these things require validation, which we have not covered. But if you want, you can just design this form. As much you can design. Then on the add button, you can on the add button just access those values, that what user has typed in these controls or what user has selected in these controls. Add a list box also for the languages known. So list box control will also be used here, some data control. Okay, on and the add button, print all those values in a tabular format. So you will use some data control here. Okay, don't use the database connection. We will do it after ADO.NET has been covered. For now, whatever user selects or input, display it in a tabular format. Okay.
Can you send this one alone as an email?
Yeah, I will send it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, anything else, guys? Okay, so we all will meet on Saturday.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, Kirti, go ahead, Kirti. Kirti, I don't know how many classes Ravikant has recorded, but I will ask him and send you the link. Okay. Anything else? Okay. Thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone. I am closing it up for today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
See you then. Bye bye.